Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about a couple of books that I have on photography. I often watch YouTube channels where people talk about their favourite photography books. Some of them I find interesting, some of them are contemporary ones that people have made themselves, and the person who is presenting it might be very enthused about it, but I'm not always all that enthused about them. And but by the same token, I love photography books, and there is two here that I'm going to share with you today that are favourites in mine. One of them is by a husband and wife photographer team, who to me, when everyone says who is your greatest inspiration in photography, well, apart from my dad, I reckon these guys, once I discovered who they were and what they did, I'll come back to them in a minute. That's Darius and Tabitha Kinsey, Kinsey, and the other person is a guy called PJ Fetner, and he wrote a book called The African Safari, The Ultimate Wildlife and Photographic Adventure, and that's that one there. And this is an amazing book. Just try and get away from the reflections there. It's an amazing book, and it's coffee table size book, I guess, and it's beautifully presented, glossy paper. This guy was I discovered this book. This was printed in the pre-digital era, and it's talking about the film photography. And this man was a quite wealthy American guy, and he used to go on lots of safaris, photographic safaris to Africa. And this book is a collection of all of those safaris and all the animals he took photos of, and the equipment he used to do it with. But not only that, he gives you the customs of the day, the currency that you need. He identifies every species just about in Africa of all the different animals, and how to photograph them, how to stalk them, what cameras to use, what lenses to use, and it's just a magnificent book. And even though it's not talking about digital photography, you can translate all of this sort of stuff in it to the modern era as well. All the knowledge in here is really quite incredible. And there's also, the other interesting thing in it is there are quotes from lots of literature about Africa, and he also gives times on the best times to go and maps and everything under the sun, what sort of accessories you need, a photography guide. What else has he got here? Yeah, the literary setting. And he says this, I'll read this to you. He says, "Nothing can really prepare you for Africa. It is too full of extremes and contrasts, too immense. A spectrum of creation, so much wider and more vivid than anywhere else that it seems to require a new set of senses or the rediscovery of lost ones. Also, if you live as close to the animals and nature as we did, the unconscious is stirred at levels deeper than anything remembered. You are returned to times and experiences in which we have lost all other access. Starting out, we felt like children again. The questions we asked. As the safari proceeded, they were to become less in number and more discriminating. But that first day, they came as thick as the dust that boiled away behind us or encircled an oncoming car. What was the name of that tree? What did the secretary bird live on in such desert? Giraffes? Here?" And that's an extract from a book called A Glimpse of Eden by Evelyn Ames. That's just one of the quotes in here. And there's heaps of famous authors have their quotations in here. So this is a fantastic book. Rudyard Kipling gets a mention here from How the Leopard Got His Spots. Teddy Roosevelt is quoted in here. Who else is there? Mark and Delia Owens, Hunter. You'd have to get the book and look at it yourself. This book, I'll put some links to where you can find this book. You can actually buy them second hand quite reasonably now. And although on one website I found they had an asking price of $558, which I think might have been a mistake. But you seem to be able to pick them up second hand. But I'll put a link to that into the text beneath the YouTube video on this. But I'd thoroughly recommend this if you're into Africa. And I was always fascinated by Africa when I was a young person, because my auntie lived there for some time, and she used to send me back stamps of Africa and all the animals, and I knew all the African animals. I always wanted to go there, but these days I'm getting a bit too too old to take on such a journey, even though a neighbour of mine who's been there several times, who lives down the road, who does missionary work there, he's always been asking me to go, but I don't think I'd get past the doctor or my wife to go there these days. Anyway, so African Safari it's called, and it's as good as any book you'll find on photography in Africa. And I know there are heaps of YouTube videos by people who are actually running photographic safaris and everything in Africa, and they're very good. But this is a beautiful book. You could while away the hours any evening, particularly in the winter time. Sit down by the fire and have a read of this book, and it'll transport you to Africa, and it'll probably make you want to go there and take photos. If you're young enough, maybe you should. Anyway, that's one book that I'm reviewing today, and as I said, I'll put some links about that in the text underneath this YouTube video. The other ones I mentioned, these two guys, they're a husband and wife team, Darius and Tabitha. I'll see if I can open up this cover. You can see that. They lived in, was it called Cedro Woolley, I think it's called. It is a city in Washington State, and they were a husband and wife team. She did all the darkroom work. They shot stuff on glass plates and all sorts of stuff, and they were around about 100 years ago now. They've been, I think they were still in the 20th century when they both died. But anyway, they were amazing, and what they did, they went into the big logging parks where they were logging all the forests near Washington, and he got special permission from the owners of these forests to go in and take photos. They wouldn't let any other photographers in there, so he had the whole place to himself pretty much. And he used to also go on family excursions in there, but took all these amazing photographs. One of the highlights of his photography is that we see these huge big trees in here, and he's always taking photos of, there's always people in all the photos. I'll see if I can find one here for you. And lots of trains, the logging trains too he took, but in all of them there's always people in the foreground to give you some idea. In fact, I just can't put my hands on one. I'll put you some links where you can look up some of this stuff anyway. He had an amazing home studio that he built as well. This is his studio that he built, and I guess you can see that there. And they had that, you can see on the right hand side of, well, the right hand side of the picture I think it is, you can see those glass panels up the top. They look like solar panels, but they were actually in his studio where he let the light through, and there was panels down the side of the house, so it was a natural light studio where he did lots of portraiture work as well, and apart from the stuff that he did out in the woods. And that was his home studio, and he was way ahead of his time in his marketing, and he used to go into the forest. His reputation was so good that he'd go into the forests, and all the people that worked in the forests, they would pre-order photos unseen and pay for them, and the next time he came back he'd bring them all wrapped up. His wife would have printed them and framed them and put them in parcels, and he'd bring them all back to deliver them when they came back the next time. That was such as how good his reputation was. So Darius and Tabitha Kinsey, one of the interesting things about them is that, see if I can find this in here. I should have all this marked out for you. They actually took photos. Where are we? He took photos on every birthday of his children. Where are we? I'll just pause this a second while I find the right page. I found it again now. He took photos of his daughter. They had one daughter, and every birthday he'd take portraits, and they're amazing portraits, beautiful portraits of his daughter over the years. And he was a very good family photographer. And back in the day when people weren't encouraged to smile all that much in their photographs, he certainly was one that encouraged that type of thing as well. I just going back here. Here we go, this is the one I was looking for. This is the sort of camera he was using. He had these huge big tripods and those big wooden cameras with plates in them and all that sort of stuff. In fact, I think what curtailed his photography career when he was still reasonably quite young, he had tripods that you had to climb up a ladder to get to the top where the camera was, and he actually fell off of one of them and injured himself, and I think that sort of closed his career quite a bit, quite earlier than it would have otherwise, because he had that injury. But heaps of photos of trains, the people working in them. You can see a shot in here. I don't know where you can pick this up, but there's a man sitting down by those big trees there. Man sitting down in the foreground there in one of those shots there somewhere, I think. But huge big trees, and he made a unique record really of what was going on back in those days in those big logging towns. I loved the approach to advertising and marketing their work that these guys had. They had all these little things that they'd post up in the place in the newspapers and around their home and in the town, and some of the little sayings they'd have here. Here's one here: the value of a really good portrait is beyond estimate. Its peculiar fitness for a holiday gift is beyond dispute. You are earnestly requested to call and examine our work. Before deciding upon your Christmas purchases, avoid the holiday rush by ordering at once. Delay may mean disappointment. Darius Kinsey, photographer, Cedro Woolley, Washington. And that's a lovely portrait there. I'm not sure who that is, but he was a great portraitist, but also captured the woods out there in the wilds of the forests. And I love this one of his. Our one desire is to please. If you are pleased, tell your friends. If you are not, tell Kinsey. There you go. He wanted to know if you weren't happy, so he could rectify it. So there you go. There's two books, and you can still get hold of these, both these books I think, are on the internet. I'll put the links where you can find them, and a bit more about Darius and Tabitha. They were an amazing couple, and this other gentleman, I don't know too much about him. I did read a bit about him on the internet one day, so there's probably some links there as well. So there you go. There's a couple of books that I've mentioned today that you can follow up on. You can still get these, I think. And sorry, this is a bit of a stop and start video, but I'm a bit like that. And one day I'll get my act together, but I doubt it. So anyway, I recommend those two books. One of them, as just to remind you before, was called African Safari by P.J. Fetner, The Ultimate Wildlife and Photographic Adventure. And the other one, this one here, is actually called, and there are other ones you can get, called Kinsey Photographer. And it's a beautiful big coffee table book. So I recommend them to you. And I'll do some more reviews on some of my books. I have a huge collection of books, love photographic books, and I've got a lot of the older ones, of course, that predate the digital era, and some of the digital ones as well, but perhaps I'll review some of those for you a bit later on. So once again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you wish. The subscriber numbers is building up a bit lately, which is good. So I'm glad that you're all watching, and maybe you'll find something of interest here. So look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks for that. See ya.